Hello, guys. Today we have with us another Argentinian journalist, Mr. Joel Richards. And I first saw him in the Copa 90 documentary about, the SuperClasico, which I loved and is my favorite movie of all time, full stop. So, because I saw you there and you seem to know a lot about Argentinian football, I'd like to, ask you a few questions about the
Sure,
country.
Omkar. Well, a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, for the invitation, and delighted to talk to you about Argentine football.
Yeah. Argentine football, the video show them it is so much culture and so much of depth in the fandom and the culture there. So first of all, I'd like to ask you the major teams everyone knows, Boca, River, uh, Banfield, I guess, then Racing Club, Independiente. So could you highlight how each of these rivalries started, at least the first few, Rosarino and the Super Classico one especially?
Sure. Okay, so you've got Argentina, as you said. There's great passion about surrounding football. They love their football. I mean, lots of countries do, but in Argentina, football has a very special place for them. Of course, everyone knows about Maradona, about Messi. It's a country that's produced some of the best players in the history of the game. And if you take Maradona and Messi, arguably Alfredo Di Stefano as well, a long time ago, but considered one of the greats, you've got three of the best players of all time, really. If you put together a top 10, maybe, you got them from Argentina. So it's a country that and it's a country that has a lot of great sides, but it's important to think about where the passion comes from, and supporters are very involved in their clubs. So football clubs in Argentina are owned by the supporters. Supporters vote, the socios, the members vote for the club president every 4 years, and so supporters are very involved in their club and how it runs. It's not like in the Premier League or most clubs in Spain, not Barcelona or Real Madrid or Athletic Bilbao, but the others, yes, where a wealthy owner can buy the club. That doesn't happen in Argentina, and with that, clubs have a social role as well. So people, River Plate supporters will go to the Monumental during the week, and maybe they'll go for a swim, maybe they'll go to the gym, maybe they'll play chess, maybe their child will be going to nursery or school there. So the clubs have a big role in the community, and so I think a lot of these things come together then to make why all the clubs in Argentina have this role. In terms of the big clubs, obviously you mentioned there a few of them. What you have in Argentina is a historical big five. So these are the big five sides that from the very start of the professional game in the 1930s had the, if you like, the political power in the AFA, the Argentine Football Association. So that's River Plate, Boca Juniors, Independiente, Racing Club, and San Lorenzo. So those are the big five. Then you've got a team like Huracan or Hurricane, which has a big supporter base and which historically, at a certain time, felt it should have been one of the other big sides. Then you have Vélez Sarsfield, a club who in 94 won the Copa Libertadores and also won the Intercontinental
Can you excuse me
Cup.
for a moment? The bell just rang, so yeah. Can you continue, please? You were at Vélez Sarsfield.
Yeah. Okay, so you also have Vélez Sarsfield, a side who doesn't have a very big supporter base compared to other teams, but they won under the coach Carlos Bianchi. They won the 1994 Copa Libertadores and Intercontinental, which is a major achievement.
Bianchi was also in Boca, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Bianchi era. So Bianchi was his first major success was with Vélez in the 90s, and as you rightly said, and then after that he went to Boca Juniors and had just phenomenal success in the 2000s. So you've got the big five, you've got Huracan, you've got Vélez as sort of traditional sides, and then what you've got a system in Argentina where we have, for a long time, the league format has changed over the years, but essentially it's a short season format which allows a club that puts together a good side, maybe a couple of veterans, a couple of good youngsters, and a decent backup squad, if you like, to then go on and win a league title. So in the last few years, 10, 15 years, you've had a lot of clubs that have won the title. So Argentinos Juniors, which is where Maradona first started out. At Banfield, who you mentioned, they won their first title ever a few years ago now, but still. Arsenal, but a club that was very modest in terms of its resources and its supporter base. So you've got a lot of clubs then who've had success in the last few years. So you've got, as I said, you've got a lot of clubs that challenge intermittently, perhaps, but really Argentine football is dominated by Boca Juniors.
Okay, so Boca is the outlier, right?
Well, that's an ongoing debate. Boca would say so, of course.
With the Libertadores, River would deny, right?
Yeah, Boca Juniors and River Plate argue about who has more supporters and which is the bigger club, right? The more important institution, if you like. River Plate have more Argentine titles. Boca Juniors have more international titles.
Oh.
Independiente have more Libertadores than anybody.
Anyone, yeah.
So, so it's an ongoing argument. But yeah, Boca Juniors and River Plate, it's come to be defined. It's defined obviously by the SuperClasico, which is a game that's watched around the world. And in the last few years, you had Boca saying, they're the only club not to have been relegated, because in 2011, River Plate were relegated. But then you had the 2018 Libertadores final, which was the last final in that cup in the format of the home and away leg, over 2 legs. Now it's just one final, like the Champions League. But before that, and for all the years preceding, you had home and away formats. And so it was the last game of that format, and it was the first time that you had River Plate against Boca Juniors in the final of the Copa Libertadores. So really, and when you all the build-up, both sides said, everything, the history of the rivalry depended on that result.
It's the end of the world, yeah.
Yeah, totally, yeah. So it was, it was the highest stakes match ever. There've been important games before between the two sides. There've been league deciders. You've had semi-final, quarter-final in the Libertadores, but never a final. So everything was resting on it. And as in Madrid at the Bernabeu, after the problems in the second return leg at the Monumental, and River Plate won that 3-1, having drawn 2-2 away at the Bombonera, and so River Plate say, now River Plate will say, well, look, that just defines everything. That result defines our rivalry. So there's nothing else to say, So this is part of the folklore of the Classico, of the SuperClasico. And as I said, it's become defined by, in the last 5 years, River Plate have been on top, really, especially on the international stage. But as you said, if you look at the history books, Boca Juniors have more South American trophies, whereas River Plate have more Argentine ones.
Yeah, so speaking of the SuperClasico, it's one of mine and a friend of mine's bucket list items, right? Because it's the thing we want to watch before we die. So I think by your name, at least you sound English, if I'm not wrong. And if you don't mind me asking. So when you shifted to Argentina, what differences did you find between the English culture and the Argentinian culture, and the animosity of the fans? Was it new? Because, how was the change, basically?
Sure. I think, so you have something where the Argentine football is in terms of the technical ability, the pace of the game, the tactics, on a purely sporting level, it's not one of the top leagues in the world. It's one of the strongest in South America, but it's nowhere near. It's probably below. No disrespect, but the Dutch league or the Portuguese league, it's below that.
Yeah.
So for any player going from the Argentine league to Europe, it's a big step up, regardless whether they go to Spain, England, Portugal, Holland, whatever. So that's on the one hand, but then you've got the off the field, just fiesta, the party, which is just amazing. And it's it's in which is never is enjoyable. It's an amazing atmosphere that they and party that the supporters organize, before they go into the ground. So especially for the Clásicos, the derbies. So for River, Boca, or for Independiente, Racing, or for Lanús, Banfield, or Newell's, Central. These are the games around which the year revolves. You know, it's all about, you can have a bad season in the league, but if you win your Clásico, everything's okay.
Yeah, totally.
It's
I
that
think
simple.
it comes from the Italian and Spanish immigrants, because even in Italy, the Roma derby and all, the derby is the game which is like the last grace or last straw on the camel's back. Even if you don't win much, if you win the derby, the fans are pretty happy to. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask, speaking of derbies again, I saw a video where there's a tradition called El Banderazo in Newell's Old Boys, I guess, where they gather around for the training and they cheer their team like it's a bloody festival and it's the end of the world. So, what are such traditions? Because I know that there are River fans putting Boca jerseys on a pig and then eating that pig, and I love all that. But are there any such stories which you know about the derbies?
Sure. Okay. Well, there's a lot of that goes on. So you have the banderazos, which are big shows of support ahead of big games. Newell's and Central are very famous for doing it in Rosario, because what Rosario, the city, has is this situation where it's not really big enough to have a third side. So there are two big teams in the city, and basically everybody supports one or the other. So that rivalry completely divides the city, and so in the build up to one of those games, the city really does just focus on that. And so these banderazos, it's just when you've got all the flags, the drums, the fireworks, and they'll go to the stadium to cheer on the players, but also to let them know how important it is. It's kind of pressure as well. It's not just because they're not enjoying it at that point. They're still nervous about what's going to happen on the Saturday, right? So you've got, so it's in part, the excitement of what's coming up, but there's also a message for the players. On the one hand, for them to know that, they've got the supporters behind them, they've got their backing, but at the same time, the pressure that they've got to perform. They need
have
to win.
face the fans if they fail. They are behind them, but if they fail, they're they're the ones they have to answer.
So. Yeah, I'd say so. And then you've got, there are other moments when supporters just fill the streets. So River Plate made a flag that was like 8 kilometers long, and they stretched that out one day. And this was just not a match day or anything. And they marched from where the old stadium used to be, 8 kilometers away from. No, it was in between La Boca and where they are now. So River Plate started in La Boca. They went to a place in Palermo, and from there they went to where they are now, the Monumental. Yeah. So and so they got together. They organized. They got together enough material to make this flag, and then they spent the whole day, marching towards the Monumental with this huge flag. I mean, it was an amazing day. It was crazy. And then you have that was to do with an anniversary of the centenary of the club. And so on special dates, there will be perhaps some sort of organization like that. I mean, you mentioned, I remember the one SuperClasico at half time at River, they managed to smuggle into the stadium this huge inflatable pig, which they then floated up into the sky. Wow. That was what, 2012, 13, I guess. And then going back to River Plate's relegation, when after in the Libertadores quarterfinal, I think it was, Boca against River at the Bombonera, Boca got a drone, and they hung a ghost,
with the bee written on
it, with the bee, and they flew that over the ground, over the pitch. So there's a lot of that winding up jokes. Yeah. Sometimes it boils over. It goes without saying. There's a darker side behind this intense and passionate support. It's a business that there is behind, off the pitch, away from the stadium.
So the Barras.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's two sides of the same coin, but when it's when things come together, it's a great show. Whatever game, any game really, you're going to go and see in Argentina.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the videos of Racing, with the whole flag around the cilindro and
Yeah.
all those. But I also feel like I wanted to talk to you about this, since you might also know it from an outsider's perspective. But it's almost like imperfection in, not even in Argentina, but all over South America. Imperfection is a theme in football. It's not. It's sometimes winning, at the last moment and fighting, giving them a fight. It's not all about, like in Germany, the fan culture there is very healthy. It's really nice
Mm.
where the fans support and they only cheer on their team. In Argentina, I think it's a lot more involving trolling and a lot more controversial. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, as I said, the rivalries are strong, and I said people, football is very important, and so it's an outlet. It's a country that has a lot of social and economic difficulties, and so for a lot of people, being able to go and see their team is an outlet. It's an escape. It's 90 minutes when they can just forget about what's going on and focus on something else. And when it goes well, it's ecstasy, it's joy, it's happiness.
Yeah.
And when it goes badly, it's the opposite of that. But I suppose that's for the standard supporter, right? But as I mentioned, you've got the Barras. So there's an organization behind Argentine supporters and match days, and so you'll have like the official supporters organization, which will organize the flags that are handed out around the stadium before a game, maybe for a big game in the Libertadores. They'll have a big show prepared, but then on top of that, you've got the Barras. So it started out as a group of people who would support the club wherever they went, and they would take the drums and the trumpets and the music, and they'd make sure that there's always songs during the game. There's chanting and support for the team throughout the match, right? But that has ballooned and snowballed into a business that every club has, but at big clubs like River and Boca in particular, there's a lot of money at stake. So they will do the ticket touting, reselling tickets. They'll be in charge of the parking near the stadium. They'll get money from the hot dog or hamburger stalls outside the stadium.
Yeah.
It's all a business that
it's on the edge.
So there's
it's not all white and not all black. It's in the gray area. I mean, you mean that?
Yeah, exactly. And as a result, you've got the dispute between rather than between the two sets of supporters. So of course, in the past there's been violence between rival sets of supporters, but now what we see quite often is the dispute is within one group of supporters, one club's supporters, because they're fighting
two ultra parties, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh my
Exactly.
God, yeah. That must tear it apart from the middle, right? That must be scary.
Yeah, and it makes it's an aspect that's still a problem. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, there were arrests of quite a few of the River Plate ultras. I mean, so it's ongoing. It's not something that was in the past and used to happen. This is still happening now, especially because obviously with the pandemic we didn't have supporters in the games at stadiums for a while, but now it's returned. The business has started up again.
Yeah. Also, do you think the no away fans rule has helped in the reduction of hooliganism and in the violence of fans, or do you think that some things will never change, or if they bring back the rule again, it'll get back to normal?
Well, I think it's a great question, really interesting issue, because I don't know many other countries that don't allow away supporters. I don't know, maybe there are, but I don't think there are many, if any. So it's a real shame because you lose that party atmosphere at grounds because you don't have the two sets of rivals going at each other, right?
Totally.
So it's a shame. And also what most people here would agree is that it's not that isn't the issue. That isn't the problem. And as we were just saying, because there's the internal battles for control of this business between two sets of ultras from the same club, right? So that's the issue. And so if the away supporters isn't the issue, it is a problem, and has been the source of many problems in the past, but it's not the only problem that needs resolving. So the away supporter ban, as I said, is a shame for the atmosphere. It's a shame because of what it says about Argentine society. It says that Argentina is not capable of organizing,
controlling its people. Yeah. Totally.
And as I used, the ultras who run the part of that extra income, that hasn't gone away either. So it doesn't resolve that either. So it's not a solution that's worked particularly well, although I suppose it has reduced the number of incidents, by and large.
That's nice. Also, I guess when you have only home fans, I guess the home stadium becomes a fortress, right? It becomes unbreachable, unstoppable. And another thing I'd like to ask you about is, which stadium's atmosphere did you find the best? And for an outsider, what game would you suggest to watch? Except, SuperClasico everyone knows, but which game did you like, and which would you suggest to an outsider, a neutral, to just watch and enjoy?
Okay, sure. Okay, that's interesting. What was the first part of the question?
Which stadium atmosphere did you enjoy the most, and which?
Okay. So I thought there was an earlier question as well. Okay, yeah, I think you've got to go to River and you've got to go to Boca. You've got to go to both of them because they're very different. They're very different. River Plate Stadium has a larger capacity, and so that's right. You were asking me about the atmosphere because the stadium become like a fortress with just supporters from one side, right? And that takes me back to River Plate because its capacity, and when it's full, it's a lot of people.
70,000-80,000
from one side. It's amazing. But the architecture of the stadium is very different. It's much more open. You're slightly further away from the ground, and so if you go to a match at the Bombonera, Boca's stadium, which is full, which it always is, by the way, it's amazing as well. And a big
it's
game.
It's a box, right? It's a KG game. It's a
it's very
towers over the pitch.
Yeah, in Argentina, what they say is it's quite like the English stadiums, which is it's quite cramped in, so it's very vertical stands, and so you feel like you're really on top of it, on top of the stadium, and on top of the pitch, and in turn, the whole story about it is that what Boca says that it's very intimidating for away teams because they feel like literally they've got the whole ground on top of them. So those are great stadiums. I've always loved going to Racing. The Cilindro is what's called the cylinder. It's not actually. It's funny because it's a fantastic stadium. It's just a big circle as the cylinder, as the names suggest. Very big capacity, great ground, but you're not always that close either. It's similar to River Plate in that sense, but it's a beautiful stadium, and I've always enjoyed going there. And then also you've got just as one last one stadiums to single out, Hurricanes. It's called the Ducó, and it's where there's a scene in the film The Secret of Your Eyes, which won an Oscar a few years ago. There's a scene that was filmed there, just to give you an idea of what it's like. But it's a beautiful old Art Deco stadium, and it's just a beautiful construction. And it's got one of the largest away ends for the standing supporters in the country. It's one of the largest ones. So that's another one to go and see. But you do quite often. There are a lot of stadiums in Argentina, and Banfield, for example, they don't fill out their stadium. They're well built, well designed. They're good stadiums, but they just don't have enough supporters to. And I mean, I mentioned Lanús and Banfield because they've played, Sudamericana and Libertadores,
Libertadores.
big games, right? And they haven't had the stadium filled out. But it's the same for a lot of clubs. You know, a lot of clubs don't fill their stadiums.
That's so
And so that
ironic,
takes-
right? I mean, I really didn't understand the part where they couldn't fill out their stadiums because everyone in the city lives and breathes football. Yet, how can't they attend the match? Can you explain that to me, please?
Sure. Well, it's difficult to explain, I guess. I suppose for in and around Buenos Aires, the Argentine capital, you have so many teams that the number of supporters is spread out. So, you know, I mean, if you just look through the league at the moment, you know, a huge number of sides are either from Buenos Aires city itself or very near, very close by. So, you know, Lanús and Banfield is essentially a suburb. It's about an hour outside, half an hour outside.
San Lorenzo.
San Lorenzo's in the city. It's in the south of the city. Racing and Independiente also just outside the city. River and Boca obviously inside. Huracan, Vélez, they're here. Argentinos Juniors, they're in the city. You've just got a lot of clubs. So I suppose part of it is that some clubs, you know, some people will support River or Boca because they're successful. Some people will support other sides because their parents, their uncle, mother or father supported that club, and it's, you know, passed down. Support the local club, of course, but there are just a lot of sides that people support, and so I suppose that is the reason it's very spread out, and that there simply isn't enough support for to fill out a stadium that's got a capacity for, you know, between 20,000-30,000 people. I guess that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I feel that maybe for the fans, it must be like anytime a team plays Boca or River, they must be supporting the opposing team, right? Because they must be tired of watching Boca River win, maybe.
Yeah. There's a big issue about how River and Boca dominate the media. They dominate everything in Argentine football. It's all that, you know, on the TV, they're always talking about River Plate and Boca Juniors and not giving much time to the other sides. With that as well, if you go away from Buenos Aires, and, you know, obviously not Rosario, where you've got Newell's and Central, but if you go maybe further south, or, well, in La Plata, you've got Gimnasia and you've got Estudiantes. My point here is that where in clubs that haven't got big, strong sides in the first division, you'll have a lot of people who support the local club who's maybe in a regional league or whatever, but they'll also support probably, you know, one of River.
You have someone to watch on TV, yeah.
Totally, exactly. So that you see that happen as well, and I mean that's something you see in Spain as well with River, Real Madrid and Barcelona as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, India is based on that. I mean, we here have 2-3 clubs at max who are, you know, really huge fan bases in Kerala in the south, and Bengal. You must have heard of Bengal. So
yeah, of course.
Bengal has the Bengal Derby, which is like 1 lakh attendance, and it's a huge deal there. They have their match day meals. If they win, then they eat prawns. One team eats prawns, the other eats a fish. Well, they have their stuff decided, and you know, it's a beautiful rivalry. But or else, it's mostly about European football, and that's what the norm is watching. So I wanted to ask again, on a continental stage, I feel that Brazilian teams are currently stronger than Argentinian teams for the Libertadores. Haven't they been? So any idea why? Means, is it just bad luck, or are they actually improving?
So yeah, the Brazilian sides at the moment are much stronger. We've got at the moment the Libertadores, and Sul-Americana champions are both Brazilian. The Libertadores champions are Palmeiras from Sao Paulo, and they are the first side since 2000, when Boca Juniors did it. They're the first side to win consecutive Libertadores.
Yeah.
So you think about what that means. In 20 years, no side has been able to win back-to-back titles. It's not very common. You don't see it. In the Champions League, you don't have that kind of alternation between champions. You see sides dominate for a couple of years.
Yeah, the three-peat, the Barra, the Barras, yeah, totally.
Exactly. So you've got that on the one hand. I mean, that's just one detail that shows what's happening. And then in the semi-finals last year, I think there was 2 sides that weren't Brazilian in both the Sul-Americana and the Libertadores. Between the 2 competitions, almost all of the sides were Brazilian. as well. And
Yeah,
both finals were all Brazilian. So you've just got this dominance at the moment from Brazilian sides. And I think it's really, you have to say it's largely economic. They've just got more money. They've got bigger sponsorship bases, and the economy, I suppose, is just stronger there. So, you look at the example of Atletico Mineiro, who signed River Plate's best player, Ignacio Fernandez, a couple of years ago. And that just shows you the seniority or the economic power that the Brazilian sides have, right? They're able to, River Plate can't hold on to their best player, and he goes to Brazil. Obviously, traditions as well, but you get a lot of the better players in Argentina are also going to Brazil a lot. So it's largely down to that. So yeah, the Brazil side's very much on top at the moment.
totally. And I'd like to end the interview with one last positive question. Do you feel Leo Messi's return to Newell's is in the books? Newell's Old Boys, his boyhood club. Yeah. I mean,
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I don't know what your other guest said, but I mean, everyone would love it to happen. But I think, and I'm not sure Messi wants it.
oh,
I mean, maybe he will. I mean, I would love him to do it. I hope he does it. It would be a great story. But he spent his whole life in Barcelona, and you just have to think for a moment what it would be like for Messi to play in Rosario.
yeah. And Rosario fans are a bit rabid, I guess. I've heard that. So I have heard that there might be problems with his family moving there because, you know, uh, since they live in Barcelona, the upper echelons of Barcelona, it must be tough to migrate from there back to Argentina, where it's a lot more chaotic.
Yeah, I think so. I just think I think everything that would surround it. I just don't see what Messi gains from going to Newell's on a sporting level.
Yeah,
Beyond obviously
love.
his love for the club, that goes without saying. But I just think if Messi was playing here, I mean, I wasn't here when Maradona was playing, but it's that kind of thing. And I just wonder what opposing defenders, how they would treat him. Obviously with respect, but also I just think it would be I don't know what he gains from coming to Argentina, apart from, unless, as I said, he just wants to play for Newell's himself. But I just think everything that would surround it would be so chaotic. I'm not sure that is something that he wants, right?
Yeah, Messi is a kind of a peaceful guy. He just wants to stay happy and he's just normal, maybe.
I
He
think
doesn't.
so. But on the other hand, you've got Di Maria is going to go back to Central.
He is?
Yes, but that's
Wow.
the latest thing that we heard is that it's confirmed that he will go back. When I think
One of my
after the World Cup.
favorites.
After the World
Yeah,
Cup.
that's why he said
So
he's stopping. He'll probably leave European and the high class football. He'll just play for the love then back to Rosario
yeah,
Central.
exactly. And then you've got cases where you have Maxi Rodriguez, who had a long spell at Atletico Madrid and Liverpool, and with the national team, of course. And he he came back and he's played for years with Newell's. So there are players who do it, but with everything that surrounds Messi, it would just be completely different. So it would be amazing. It would be a cultural revolution, for if he
It
were to
would
come in.
revolutionize the Argentinian league itself.
Yeah.
I mean, the money coming in, the sponsorship, it would be like a whole wave coming back to
Yeah,
Argentina.
exactly. Yeah, it would be. So, maybe there will be moves to make it happen. But as I said, I'm not sure that Messi himself, I don't speak to him. It's not something that I know that I've talked to him about. But I just don't, it doesn't seem to make sense, if you see what I mean. I think he wants to go back to Barcelona more than come to Rosario.
Yeah, totally. It does seem like that. He's too eager to go back to Barca. Or I think he's focusing on the Albi Celeste now, with the World Cup coming and Copa. The team being pretty great. Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful how they changed from 2018 to 22. The story just deserves.
Yeah, it's been a big change. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how they've they've transformed it, and it's you're looking at who has done it. Scaloni, who's not a coach who's worked at club level. He's not. He's young. He's in his early 40s, and yet
he's no superstar. Also, he's no Bielsa. He's no Simeone. He's no Pochettino. He's just a player, just converted to a manager pretty recently. And to be frank, he seemed pretty lackluster to me in the 2019 Copa America, but he proved himself. I mean, no doubting.
Well, nobody expected him to last. He was supposed to be an interim coach, and then when he was kept on for the Copa America, it was like, okay, we'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
But then since then, that game that they lost to Brazil in 2019 is the last game that Argentina have lost. So since then, they've won everything. And they found, a great backbone of a side. They've got a great side now. I don't know if they're the best in the world. I'm not sure about that, but I think Brazil are stronger. But they've got a great side, and really anything other than reaching the semi-finals for Argentina at the World Cup would be a
failure,
a disaster. Really. Yeah.
Whom do you think? Again, I asked this question to my other guest, Santiago Bauza. You might know him.
Of course.
Yeah. So, which team do you think will be toughest for Argentina, and which team do you think will Argentina find the easiest?
Are we talking hypothetical or in the group stage?
Hypothetical in the knockouts, the big teams.
Right. Okay. Well, Argentina have a big thing with Germany. Just historically, but Argentina won the '86 World Cup defeating Germany. So, and even though Germany have had a couple of tournaments where things haven't worked out for them, still I think they'd always fear Germany in particular. I think Brazil as well, would be a very
tough one. I think
very
France
difficult
has Mbappe
they know
who
each
can
other
just
so well.
unlock. Mbappe can just run behind, and finish them.
Yeah, I mean, France goes without saying, and Spain as well. I mean, if you get to the last four, anything can happen. I suppose that's the bottom line, because one thing is who Argentina fear, but there's also what other countries can do to stop Argentina, right?
Yes.
So it works both ways. I think there are a lot of clubs, a lot of countries that wouldn't want to play Argentina either. So it cuts both ways. On the one hand is who Argentina would be fearful of or not fancy or rather miss. But then a lot of countries will be saying, look, I really don't want to have to come up against, Paredes and De Paul in midfield, Di Maria, Messi up front,
Lautaro, Acuna, Emi
Martinez.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. And Argentina have got a good squad. I mean, I think for a long time you felt you knew the starting 11 or the 8 key players, and then after that there was maybe not great options. But now I think they've got the fullback situation isn't resolved perhaps, but it's stronger than it has been for a long time.
It is somewhere. At least they have fullback.
Well, you've got 2 players that in position. So you've got Tagliafico and Acuna, for example, on the left back,
and Montiel and Molina. Yeah,
exactly. And these are so you've got 2 options for those positions. Where in the past, Argentina hasn't had good options in those positions. So I just mean it's a stronger team. Maybe not player by player. I would say the 2014 World Cup final squad. Was with Agüero, Higuaín, Mascherano. Player for player, that was a better side. But as a team, is gelling really well. Is really coming together, and there's a great bond in the squad as well, which is important as well. So I think they've got reason to be optimistic. And as I said, if you get to the semi-finals, and then anything can happen.
Do you also feel that there has been a sort of a PR drive by Argentina? I mean, Argentinian fans, I have noticed that always too eager to, toot their own horn. They want to show that their team is winning, their team is good. But it almost feels like not only on the PR level of things, it's also that when the club players go to international, generally their improvement in the club causes good playing in the international team. But here it's vice versa, where the players come to the international team, they improve in the team, they bond and gel well with the others, and then go back refreshed back to the clubs.
Yeah, it's interesting how that all works out. And I mean, I interviewed Oscar Tabares, the former Uruguay coach, before the, what was it, the 2010 World Cup, I think it was. And I tell this story just because he was talking about how, no, 2014, sorry, in Brazil. Because we were talking about, you know, the Maracanazo back in 1950 and, you know, what Uruguay could achieve. And he said, look, and he went player by player who'd had really good seasons in their clubs. So he had title winners in Spain, I think Holland, maybe in the not in England, but he had a lot of players who were doing really well at their clubs. And he said, our challenge is to make that work, you know, as to bring that together. And I suppose that's the same for all the clubs. And you've got most of the South American clubs, countries at the World Cup have got players who on a club level are doing very well. You know, they're playing Champions League football in the quarter, semi-finals, final. You've got league winners. So it is the challenge to bring all of those together. And obviously Brazil and Argentina and Uruguay, but I mean, Brazil are some of the best players on, you know, in clubs in Europe. So it is that challenge. And I think this run of over 30 games that Argentina has been undefeated has meant that players come to international duty, you know, very optimistically. They do well, they perform well, they go back to their clubs, they do well there, and it's a cycle that helps them. Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting time because I've never seen, you know, this run of wins goes back to Basile a number of years ago. So it's been a long time since Argentina has been doing so well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next few months
had a great time and lovely time interviewing you, sir. Also, one last thing, can you suggest a book to, you know, learn more about Argentinian culture and clubs and the rivalries? Is there a book which you can suggest, or a movie short?
Well, there are two books I'd recommend. First, I wrote a book about the SuperClasico called SuperClasico. So I would, of course, recommend that. And I mean, then, you know, the definitive book on Argentine football is by Jonathan Wilson, Angels. So I would look out for that. Yeah, the book by Jonathan Wilson on Argentine football it's a big read, but it's the definitive book. So mine's a lot shorter. It's an ebook on the SuperClasico. So you can choose between a short read or a long read between those two.
Wow. Thank you for the options. Again, had a lovely time interviewing you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the time, Omkar. I've enjoyed it.
Really. Goodbye.